Hello and welcome to this week's West Asia Post with me, Ghadi Francis, our weekly show where we bring you stories from the world's most volatile region. From airstrikes to vaccinations, West Asia has witnessed a lot this week, but our top focus remains on the rocket attack in Iraq. A volley of projectiles targeted a military base near Erbil's airport. This is the most serious attack on the US-led coalition since Joe Biden took the White House. So what does this mean for Iraq and the region?
It's the dead of the night in Erbil, Iraq. An uneasy calm engulfs this city. In a land festered by war, Erbil has known relative peace. But that was about to change. The stillness of the night soon gave way to explosions. A volley of 14 rockets hit the Erbil airport. Three of them fell inside the adjacent military base. Inside were American troops. It was a daring attack on the coalition, the deadliest in almost a year. Once the dust settled, authorities took stock of the damage. One foreign contractor had been killed, at least 14 others wounded. The city's northwest had been peppered by the barrage. Residential areas took the brunt of it. Large craters marked the spot where the rockets fell.
The bombing that happened last night in Erbil is just to create a sense of panic among people in the city. This is an unethical war. In the military, they say that these are operations intended to create a kind of psychological panic among your enemies.
In Iraq, finding the perpetrator is never easy. Shia militia roam the land unchallenged. So which one planned this daring attack? They call themselves the Guardians of Blood, the Saraya Awliya al-Dam. They claim to be distinct from the more powerful Shia groups, like the Kataib Hezbollah. But in reality, they serve the same interests, that of Iran. But Tehran denies any links with Saraya Awliya al-Dam. Iraq's safety, it says, is top priority. There are two possible rationales for this attack. One, it's the work of a fringe militia looking to stamp Shiite dominance. Or two, it's a choreographed plan hatched in Tehran. The objective? To test the new US president. Iraq was largely missing from Joe Biden's campaign stumps. The trend has continued since becoming president. An ominous omission, considering Biden's checkered Iraq record. He infamously voted for Bush's Iraq war. Convinced President Obama to draw down US troops, laying the ground for the Islamic State's unchecked expansion. Iraq, one could say, has never been Biden's forte. The American response to the attack has been mixed. Top diplomat Antony Blinken vowed action against those responsible, but said America would wait until investigations conclude, a sentiment mirrored by the White House.
We're still working through attribution with our Iraqi partners to determine precise attribution for this attack. Obviously, that's a priority. I will convey that we are outraged by last night's rocket attack in the Iraqi Kurdistan region.
There are a couple of things Biden must contend with. First, the security failure. How did a little-known militia manage to send rockets deep into US positions? Second, how does America respond? This is the first major attack on them since Biden took office. His response will set the tone for the remainder of his term. Biden's predecessor was a man of fire and fury. Someone who acted first and contemplated later. Biden's former boss was a pacifist, a staunch advocate of US withdrawal. Somewhere in between is where Joe Biden wants to be. West Asia Bureau, WION. World is one.
We will continue to bring you all the latest updates from the heart of the conflict. Don't go anywhere, we have a lot more lined up for today. But first, as usual, let's take a look at what else is making headlines across West Asia.
Gaza received its first shipment of COVID-19 vaccines. This comes after Israel approved the transfer through its border with the Hamas-run territory. The Gaza Strip is home to 2 million Palestinians and has recorded over 53,000 cases. Four weeks after taking office, Joe Biden speaks to the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in an hour-long telephonic conversation. Biden reaffirms his steadfast commitment to Israel's security and strategic cooperation. This comes amid clear disagreement with Israel over US rejoining the Iran nuclear deal. West Bank was blanketed in snow for the first time in years after a snowstorm hit the region. In the biblical city of Bethlehem, snow adorned the bell tower of the Church of Nativity. Due to the harsh weather conditions, schools and offices were closed across the region. The United States says that it is ready to talk to Iran about both nations returning to the 2015 nuclear deal. Meanwhile, Iran's Foreign Minister Javad Zarif has said that Iran will immediately reverse its nuclear actions when US sanctions are lifted.
Lebanon has started vaccinating its citizens. Now this comes as the country battles a sharp spike in infections, one that has overwhelmed its healthcare system. So let's take a look at what this inoculation drive means for the country.
2021 is the year of vaccines. With West Asian nations kicking off their vaccination drives, Lebanon has now started inoculating its citizens, racing against time as infections spike in the nation.
We are launching the national vaccination campaign against COVID-19 with high-quality, effective and trustworthy vaccines. Afterwards, we will begin to gradually free ourselves from the restrictions that this pandemic forced on us, and therefore, life will come back to the various sectors after we reach the desired social immunity.
The country began by inoculating the head of critical care at its biggest public hospital. Mahmoud Hassoun became the first person to take the vaccine in Lebanon. He received the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine. Just a day after the very first doses landed at Beirut's airport.
Thank God. For me, I hope this day will be a day of hope for all of us so that we can start taking the vaccination as soon as possible to protect ourselves and to protect our society from this pandemic that has left many dead, both in Lebanon and across the world. Hopefully, today is the beginning of the end of this pandemic.
Popular Lebanese comedian Salah Tizani was the second to receive a jab in front of the cameras. However, Lebanon's caretaker PM Hassan Diab said that he would wait for his turn to be vaccinated.
I will not be taking the vaccine today. Today the priority is for you citizens, it's for the health sector.
Healthcare workers and those over 75 are the first to be vaccinated. 18 hospitals across the country are joining in on the vaccination campaign. Lebanon has ordered around 6 million vaccine doses in total. This includes 2 million vaccines from Pfizer-BioNTech. Another 2.7 million will come via the International COVAX distribution program. The World Bank has allocated $34 million to inoculate 2 million of Lebanon's 6 million inhabitants. However, Lebanon's health minister has assured that the vaccine will reach each and every citizen.
We must be united. We should not doubt. There is no smuggling. There is no political or sectarian considerations. the vaccine will reach every Lebanese citizen throughout this wounded and pained country. I want to say that today we are concerned with all the residents of the Lebanese territory.
While nearly 500,000 people have signed up to be vaccinated, many in Lebanon continue to remain hesitant to receive the jab. Lebanon has been under a lockdown since mid-January. This comes after an unprecedented spike in cases overwhelmed hospitals across the country. Delays in signing a vaccine deal has caused frustration in Lebanon. A slow rollout has further exacerbated the crisis. Meanwhile, the COVID-19 pandemic has compounded the woes of Lebanese citizens. The country is already reeling from an economic and political crisis. Lebanon's government stepped down after the August 4 port blast, but it continues to remain in a caretaker capacity. This comes as a divided political class has since failed to agree on a new cabinet. For many in Lebanon, the vaccination campaign is a sign of relief. But others remain skeptic as millions reel under the crisis. West Asia Bureau, WION. World is one.
The Syrian refugee crisis remains the worst refugee crisis of our times. Millions of Syrians continue to battle frigid temperatures and horrible conditions in their temporary camps. But now several Syrian families moved into a charity-built cement camp in a hope for a better life. Let's take a look.
26-year-old Abdullah Khalasi was displaced from the village of Kafr Nuran last year. The family fled when the Syrian regime pressed an offensive against rebel-held north. Since then, Abdullah's family has endured a lot. They have lived in tents and olive groves along Syria's northern border. But the family are now among a few lucky ones. They are moving into the new 24-square-meter concrete homes. Homes provided by a Turkish charity.
Thank God I moved here and now I have a home. Even if it's not the same as the house I was living in, it's still better than a tent.
The camps stretch as far as the eye can see. Thousands of tents on either side of the road, often linking Turkey to the city of Idlib. But now with a smattering of new concrete block houses, permanent housing units built by the Turkish NGOs.
We started working on the housing units project in 2020. We built 1,000 housing units, half in the countryside of Idlib and half in the Azaz area, in the countryside of Aleppo. We moved families from camps because they were suffering there, especially those living in random camps that do not have sanitation or any equipment or infrastructure.
The Syrian refugee crisis is the world's largest humanitarian crisis since the World War II. Today, over 12 million Syrians are displaced from their homes. More than 6.6 million have been forced to flee the country. Over 1 million Syrian children have been born in exile. Turkey already hosts more than 3.6 million Syrians. It has also refused to let any more enter. But its NGOs are busy building an enormous stretch of new housing, homes that will help deal with the latest wave of displacement.
In case they return to their houses and lands, these units will become a charitable endowment for any needy person, whether they were waiting for their destroyed houses to be rebuilt or they do not have a home in the first place.
Along the dirt tracks of the camp, children play while women chat around washing lines. Many tents have their own solar panels to charge batteries and provide light. There are public toilets, though the smell from open sewers remains overpowering.
When I got here, I found a huge difference. Thank God. Here we have a house, there's no mud. My children and I used to slip and fall all the time, and they couldn't go out to relieve themselves. There was a lot of mud, and my children can't see at night. My son is 21 years old, and he can't even see.
Ankara encouraged the construction of more permanent structures. This is a way for the country to stop refugees from trying to breach the border. But with nowhere to run, the new homes offer some relief to Syria's desperate displaced. West Asia Bureau, WION World is One.
A recent court ruling in Gaza had barred women from traveling without the permission from a male guardian. Now, the restriction had drawn massive criticism from rights groups, accusing it of gender-based discrimination. But now Gaza's top Islamic judge has agreed to revise the ruling. Our next report tells you more.
It's the 21st century. Women are shattering glass ceilings. Calls for gender equality are growing louder. But it looks like Gaza is going back in time. A controversial ruling has sparked massive backlash. It says that women now need permission from their male guardians to travel. A move that further restricts movement in and out of the Gaza Strip. The restriction was imposed by the higher Sharia Council in the Hamas-run Gaza. The ruling resembles guardianship laws prevalent earlier in other West Asian nations. Permission would have to be registered at the court, but the man will not be required to accompany the woman. The Gaza Strip is home to almost 2 million people. It is controlled by the Hamas and heavily blockaded by neighboring Israel. Women often leave the Gaza Strip in search for a better future.
The circumstances we are living in Gaza does not give hope or a positive life outlook. So here, the woman will consider taking the decision of leaving the country so she could find a better future outside. Maybe what she couldn't find in her country, she will find in other countries.
The rollback of women's rights has since led to huge protests. Rights groups say that the ruling violates Palestinian laws against gender-based discrimination. Protests also erupted outside the office of the council's Hamas-appointed chairman, who signed the law.
It takes us backward to the old ages. Even Saudi Arabia, who were used to criticize, has backed off this decision, and now women there are on the way to getting their rights. This decision violates the basic laws. It violates the freedom.
The backlash comes as Palestinians plan to hold elections later this year. While this move by Hamas could solidify its position among its conservative base, many fear that it could be detrimental for the group. With backlash growing, Gaza's top Islamic judge has now agreed to revise the court ruling.
We have agreed to redraft this ruling, which includes all of the travel bans cases, whether it includes minors or adults included in custody.
But even with calls of redrafting, it has not yet been specified what the changes will be. Either way, women in Gaza are looking at a grim future, one coupled with eroding rights and no sign of escape. West Asia Bureau, WION World is One.
The Red Sea hosts one of the most diverse and unique coral reefs in the world, but this is now under threat from an Israel-UAE oil deal. Experts are now arguing that the pipeline could lead to the next big ecological disaster. Our next report tells you more.
This is the Red Sea, a unique water body hosting some of the most diverse coral reefs in the world. But these world-renowned coral reefs are now in danger. The reefs are just 200 meters away from where oil from the Gulf will be unloaded. In focus is a UAE-Israeli oil pipeline deal, one that activists fear could cause a pollution disaster. The agreement is to bring the Emirati crude oil by tanker to a pipeline in the port of Eilat. It will then transport it to Israel's Mediterranean city of Ashkelon. The deal was signed after the two nations normalized ties last year. While it will come into force within a few months, experts have warned of possible leaks and spills at the aging Eilat port.
The biggest problem is that EAPC doesn't care about anyone. EAPC doesn't care about Eilat's tourism. EAPC is a private company nowadays. It needs to take money. It wants to move oil. That's not appropriate for this time and age. It might have suited the 60s or 70s when we were an undeveloped country. Nowadays, it's inappropriate. In addition, this pipeline was made 40 to 50 years ago. It already had malfunctions. The docks you see here were built 35 years ago.
In a car park overlooking Eilat's oil jetty, many protest against what they see as a disaster waiting to happen. Chants echoed that profits would come at the expense of the corals.
A campaign is something for the long term. We first of all want to inform the residents of Eilat and in all of Israel about the pipeline plan, because this plan is being done covertly and no one knows. So first of all we want to inform the public, increase the size of the objectors, and in the end, if the problem isn't solved, we'll have to get in the way of things.
While coral populations are under threat from bleaching caused by climate change, the reefs in Eilat have remained stable due to their unique heat resistance. Eilat's Coral Beach Reserve extends up to 1.2 kilometers off the city's coast, often protecting reefs that are home to a rich variety of marine life. But their proximity to the Israel state-owned EAPC port puts them at grave risk. The infrastructure is not set up to prevent accidents, and pollution can be treated once it is in the water only.
Malfunctions happen, and the result will be a constant leak of oil pollution right here, just next to the reef. Where you see those people, that's where the reef begins. So right next to it, the water will be polluted.
The Israeli Environmental Protection Ministry is also demanding urgent talks, while EAPC says that the pipeline could increase oil flow through Eilat by millions of tons. Many fear that this could be the next ecological disaster waiting to happen. West Asia Bureau, WION World is One.
In Iraq's markets, shopkeepers wait for their first customer. The generous tradition of al-istiftah allows the first customer to set his or her own price for goods without the usual haggling. Let's take a look at this age-old tradition.
Istiftah, a tradition as old as time. But for Iraq's shopkeepers, the tradition lives on. As the sun rises over Erbil's historic bazaar, shopkeepers get ready for the day. But what they are eagerly waiting for is the istiftah, the first customer of the day. One who is always believed to be a good omen. For a country as famously hospitable as Iraq, the custom of istiftah is subtle but sweet. The Arabic word means opener. It is used for the first customer of the day. This customer gets to name his or her price for the goods being purchased. And all of this happens without the usual process of haggling.
The first customer is exceptional. When the shop owner opens his store first in the morning, he sells goods at any price requested by the istiftah, and they consider it a good omen to begin their day. As a shop owner myself, I sell the first item without any benefice. The first customer carries wealth and well-being straight from God to the business person in the early morning.
The istiftah tradition is set to set the tone for the day. Shopkeepers who have not yet sold anything put a chair outside their shop. This acts as a signal to their colleagues. Those who have made their first sale then direct any incoming shoppers to other shops. This continues until everyone has had their istiftah.
I do not charge the entire sum. I'll take something symbolic from him, even just 1,000 or 2,000 Iraqi dinars. Whatever cash I earn first in a day, I kiss it and raise it to my forehead as a sign of gratitude to God.
But an istiftah never goes for free. First customers offer a very discounted price for their early morning purchase. But it is frowned upon to request something at no cost at all. The origin of the istiftah tradition remains disputed. Some say it hails from the Hadith. Others believe that it is just an ancient custom that was practiced for a long time. In Iraq, it even goes beyond the old bazaar. Taxi drivers, plumbers and mechanics have also adopted it. Even as malls and new departmental stores come up in Iraq, the generous tradition lives on even among the young. West Asia Bureau, WION World is One.
That's all we have for you on this episode of the West Asia Post. I will see you next week with a brand new lineup, bringing you more stories from the world's most volatile region. Until then, stay home and stay safe. I am Ghadi Francis, and you are watching WION World is One.